Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Anne and I'm the consultant at the Digital Transformation Hub, a part of the Info Exchange group we're connecting up. The Hub focuses on digital technology as an enabler to support service transformation in new ways of working, assisting nonprofits on a broader digital transformation journey. Before we begin, we'll start with a bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted, so if you have any technical issue, please type it into the chat box on your webinar panel and I can assist you. If you have any question during the session, please also type into the chat box and Sophie and I will answer them by the end of the webinar. We really encourage you to ask as many questions as you think of throughout the session to make this as interactive a session as possible. No question is too silly. If you are on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and video of the webinar. If possible, please close all other programs to help you have the best experience. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording and the slides will be sent to you as soon as we can after the webinar ends. Before we start, I'd also like to remind you that there will be a short survey at the end of the webinar. Today, I'm excited to welcome you to Collaborating with Purpose using Microsoft Teams. Hi, Sophie.
Hi, thanks, Anne, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I first would like to begin by acknowledging that the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I am speaking to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and that respect to all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people today. I also acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So thank you for joining us today. Anne and I sorry, where's my notes gone? Digital transformation consultants here at the Hub, and we spend our days talking about Microsoft environments. We talk about information systems, cybersecurity, with a range of different non-for-profits. And so we ultimately just really enjoy talking about technology and how technology can enable your organisation to operate successfully. Last time Anne and I spoke, we talked about Microsoft Teams meetings and using files in different ways. So today, we're going to spend the next 20 minutes building your confidence in the Microsoft Teams application so that you feel confident when you're collaborating with colleagues and improving your remote working experience. I hope it's started to move to a bit of a hybrid working experience where you're back in the office a little bit. And that's where Teams is going to be really beneficial to you, especially when some of your staff are at home. You can still use the app to collaborate. By the end of the webinar, we are hoping that you will be able, we're going to discuss the options and the ways that you can view Microsoft Teams. We're going to explore the different ways you can chat and use the app prefix to help you communicate with different people. And then I'm going to pass to Anne, who's going to describe the difference between teams and channels and how you can navigate them successfully. Great. So teams can sometimes look slightly different to different people. If you think you know why that is, or if you're having issues with the way it appears, please pop your chat suggestions in the chat window, and we can talk through them as well as share your insights with everyone else on the call. From even this screenshot, my application looks slightly different in that it's got a different color. It's slightly different for each person, and there's key differences to why it might look that way. It might be a configuration difference. So it might be that your organization has turned on or off different features so that you have different ways that the app operates. An example to that is you might not be able to create a Teams channel, for example, and we'll explore that a little bit more in a minute. If you're using the app or you're in your browser, there are two different ways you can access Teams and give different looks and feels of Microsoft Teams. If you use Teams regularly, I'd strongly recommend downloading the app. It's going to really improve your experience. If you're using a Mac, you're using a browser, or you're using Windows, they'll give different appearances to the application. And so things might be in different spaces. Your screen size. If you're in full screen mode or you have it minimized, that will impact it just as much as Zoom. If you've zoomed in, that will also impact it. And how you're accessing the app itself. Are you on a laptop? Are you on your phone? Are you on an iPad? Slightly different configurations that move things in different spots. If you're having issues, first of all, check your Zoom. So check that you can see that. There's 3 dots up the top right-hand side. Click on that, and then you'll be able to edit your Zoom. Also, please do pop them in the chat. We can either speak about it on the call, or if it's a long-term issue, speak to your IT provider and ask them to have a look. Okay, let's dive into it. If you have a second, open the Teams application as we're talking through this. I'm going to drag mine on as well so that we can actually engage with it. But please have a play with it as we're talking and pop your questions in the chat. There are 2 ways you can speak with people in the application. You can either chat privately or in a group chat, and that's really useful for sort of random questions or chatting about your weekend. That's the first button up here. You can see a conversation there. Really useful. I use this on a daily way to, Anne and I were talking on it just before, just to communicate and touch base before we ran this webinar. The second way is using the Teams platform. So then actually using the collaboration space to post or have conversations that people then can reply and log that conversation. So let's have a look at that, and I'll give some tips along the way. So if you start a conversation down here, you can actually start typing in. So if I use the @ symbol, you can see that that gives a little pop-up, and I can actually tag Anne and go, hi. And you can use emojis, you can chat in different ways. That @ symbol will give Anne a notification, and then she can actually reply and we can start talking in that way. Makes it really easy, especially if you've got a specific topic you want to talk about over a couple of days, you can come back to it. I've seen it work really well for fundraising campaigns, so everyone can get an update on where that campaign is at. And you can see Anne responded to that. I actually got a notification. It just disappeared, but I actually got a notification to tell me that Anne has responded. Another really useful tip in here is you can use your cursor and actually enter twice so that you can make paragraphs in here as well. So you can go, all right, how are you? And I press Shift Enter. It will actually go down a space. And I can go, how is that report going? And then press either Enter or the Send button on that far right-hand side. So really useful to engage in different ways and keep specific conversations in certain places. I quite commonly lose conversations, so I can search up the top there and actually find either people or topics that I've talked about. So these must have been topics I've talked about previously and needed to go find that conversation at a later date. So the search feature is really beneficial there. Great. Which of these 2 options, whether it be the chat or Teams, do you use more frequently? Have you tried using this Teams function before to have those sort of conversations? Pop them in the chat what you find comfortable with, and we'll respond to you during the webinar. I'm going to now pass over to Anne, and she's going to start talking about Teams and channels.
Thank you, Sophie. So Microsoft Teams has both Teams and channels. Have you used Teams or channel before? And can you explain the difference? So here's the difference. Teams are a collection of people, content, and tools surrounding different projects and outcomes within your NFP. A team is designed to bring together a group of people who work closely to get things done. Teams can be dynamic for project-based work as well as ongoing to reflect the internal structure of your NFP, for example, by departments, locations, or functions of each team or projects. Conversations, files, and notes across team channels are only visible to members of the team. While teams are a collection of people, content, and tools surrounding different projects and outcomes, channels are dedicated sections within a team to keep the conversations organized by specific topics, projects, or disciplines. Whatever works for your NFPs. Channels are places where conversation happens and where the work actually gets done. Channels can be open to all team members, standard channels, or if needed, can be private. So in private channel, it limits communications to a certain people within a team. So even if you have permissions to different content in standard channels in that teams, private channels contents are only available to those specifically added to that private channel. Can you move to the next slide, please, Sophie? You can also add apps under your channel by clicking the plus button. As a standard, you will see posts, files, and wiki tabs. You can see that in the red bordered area in the picture. Though we are not wiki fans, you might be, but you can use useful apps like OneNote instead of wiki. Channels enable you to post or start a conversation in chat, just as Sophie showed it before, and you can add or edit files in there as well. Files that you can share it in a channel on the Files tab are stored in SharePoint. By default, when working on your document in Teams, it will open in Teams too, because Teams is a one-stop shop. There is an option to open it in its native application, such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint as well. By right mouse clicking or using the three more action dot next to a channel or team, you can hide it if it's no longer required or simply delete it. But just remember and be careful that if you delete a channel or team, it is gone for good and you lose the history of a document stored or chat occurred. You can also add another channel from the team level. You can manage team. This will show you who is the channel or team, or you can add or remove team members in edit team. So explore them yourself, create demo teams and channels, and try all the options in there. Personally, with the tabs, I would like to add forms because normally in many organizations, though they have already got platform like Office 365, they use still SurveyMonkey or some other platforms for forms. But Office 365 has its own form tools as well. It's also called Forms. With that, you can hold live requests or even internal polls. Very useful. How about you, Sophie? What's your favorite tools in here?
One of the tools I really enjoy using and have used really successfully in other places is the use of Trello. So Trello can be integrated into your team's page so that you can have a specific Trello page attached to and you can move your work accordingly. I found it really useful and a point of centrality, or however you call it, that the team can go to and find all the different resources we use. So I really enjoyed Trello in that way.
Yeah, when you create your own demo teams or channel, please feel free to try adding new tools in there as well, or extension, so you can have more idea of how you can add new tools, what works the best for your organization, and then you add that to your own internal process. So now it's question time. We have seen some question pop in right here. I've found that opening files in the native application rather than Teams means that changes don't save. I have to re-upload the original documents. Is there a way around this? So Sophie, can you please show us how you upload the files in Teams and then you open it through the native application, but it's still safe to the cloud, not offline?
Absolutely. So depending where they've shared the file, if they've shared it in a Teams channel, it will save to SharePoint. So if it's within the files, so this is the posts, and you can see we were talking, and Anne sent an emoji just as I missed it before. You can go Files, and then if we click on, so if we open this right now, it will open within Teams. But if I click on the three dots just here, I can either open it in SharePoint or I can open it in App, which is going to open it in PowerPoint. So that will then, depending how, I don't know if this is going to work well, it's going to, and I can see that this is the live version. If you're having issues, you can always check up here to check your different ways that it's set up, and if you're using the most recent version or not. I always look at the autosave because that's a way I can check if I'm in a live version or if I'm in a read-only or a different version. Great, so I'm going to go back to
Yeah, nice tip. Please feel free to continue to pop in more questions. I have the next question here. What's the best way to send file during chat? Another file question.
So in chat, and jump in if I'm wrong, you can actually just drag the file. So let me just see if I have a file I can drag across. So if I say I've got this, I can just pop that. Now this is just a copy of it. That should be the right one. So that's in the correct spot. So then I can share that with Anne. So nice and simple way to share is actually that drag feature into the message bubble, and that will share as well. If you're having issues with file sharing, we did also do a webinar a couple of weeks ago that talked about file sharing in different ways. And I'd say if this is one of those things that still don't make sense to you, I'd say go have a look at that webinar and that will explain it a lot more. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Anne?
And yeah, but when you so when you share file that way, it's quick and easy, but sometimes it's hard to find and organize the files. So another organize and then probably another way that's better to track those files is to upload the files to related teams or channels, and then you share a link to that file in chat instead of directly share the file. So the file is more organized and it stays with the latest version of that file as well. So multiple ways to do that, but check out the webinar to see to have a more detailed instruction. We have a question here. How do you organize team and channels?
Would you like to take that one, Anne?
Yes. So as I mentioned before in my previous slides, you can organize, there are multiple ways you can organize team and channels. Some organizations, they organize it by features or functions of the teams in the organizations, such as HR, finance. Sometimes they add some other categories, such as resources or policy and procedures, and sometimes it's a mix. The best way is whichever way works or most suitable for your organizations. And whenever you move to Teams or build it from scratch, you should discuss it with the teams, and so they have experience of the structure on their own, and they can contribute to the structure that they will be using for a long time. So they are not in shock when they change to a new system, and because the best tech is the tech that works for the team. So better to engage the teams early in the change management process when you build teams or channels. I'm waiting for more questions. Hopefully, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop in. What are the most, we have a question here, what are the most common application that we can use in Teams? I think it's the extension of the tabs in Teams. Sophie, can you please show us some of the extension that we can add?
There's a long list there. There any that you would, it depends how you use your Microsoft environment to what's suitable, and then what your team use. So I think the key bit is you don't necessarily want to add all of them. You want to add what's useful and engaging to your team. So I'd suggest exploring each of these to pick the most suitable applications. I think it's interesting that you could add just a SharePoint page that might be relevant, etc., depending how your environment is supported, or there is a range of apps that are supported within Microsoft Teams.
Thank you, Sophie. The next question is, if we can upload files in both Teams and SharePoint, when should we use Teams and when should we use SharePoint?
I would say it's not a simple answer, and to actually go to the previous webinar that talks through this. Teams is really, really great as a product. There's complexity in how those files are saved, and how it uses SharePoint in that way. So jump on that webinar. It's within the Connecting Out past webinars, and that will explain that further.
Thank you, Sophie. Another question. My Teams doesn't seem to have the open and out feature. Would my organization have turned this off, or should I try an update? So my take on this is, firstly, are you using Teams in browser or in app? You should use Teams in the Teams application, download it to your computer, update it to the latest version so you have the full feature. If you have the latest versions of the applications and you still cannot see opening out, it might be because of configurations. So at that point, check with your IT team or be in touch with us for more instruction. I hope that answers your question. So Sophie and I have mentioned a lot about previous webinar because this is a series of collaborating and use team with purpose. So we have gone through multiple lunch and learn sessions talking about Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, how those work together, what is the best way that you can collaborate with other members differently. So this one is a part of this. Please feel free to view the previous recording on the Connecting Up event sections, and then pop in more questions if you have any. Thank you. If you no longer have any questions, we will stop the webinar right here. After this webinar ends, there will be a short survey. Please feel free to fill in the survey so we know where we can improve in the next sessions. If you have any other questions and what is the potential next topic? Oh, there's a last minute question here from Joanne. Can you show us how to do a poll? Sure.
Can, yes.
Yes.
And jump in if I am missing any steps.
Yes.
So you can jump into
the
more. So jump into your conversation or into a new conversation, and you can actually find forms just here within Teams. And then you can start building your poll. What is your favorite breakfast? And then you can start adding your options. And you can have multiple answers. You can record the respondents. And then if you send it, we'll be able to see, and Anne will be able to actually vote on this if it's sent. Great. So that's how you build a poll. Really simple.
Yes.
There we go. We can see it just there. So then everyone can vote on it. Works really well. Great. Thank you. It should update. Oh, it just posted twice. That's why. There we go. And Anne's voted there. So I've used it, seen it used really well for times when scheduling meetings and things like that in Teams, and there's heaps of different ways you can use forms successfully.
Amazing. Thank you for the questions. So please feel free to fill in the short survey, send us any questions, be in touch, and then see you in the next Lunch and Learn sessions. Thank you for your time today, Sophie, and everyone.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye.